right, welcome back to our coverage of the supplementary elections. It's been a robust coverage so far. We're looking at all the states' preparations, etc. We have some guests as well in Abuja. We'll come back to them because we had put them on pause before we went on break. But let's check in with Sokoto State with our correspondent, Kayla Megwa. She's in Sokoto State, and she's going to tell us just how ready the state is for supplementary elections. Kayla.
Hi, Ijoma. Okay, so it's been a very interesting day in Sokoto State. I think the way to describe Sokoto today is tense yet calm. It's a very interesting dynamic. There was some excitement earlier today at Wamako local government area, but it had nothing to do with politics. It was a delegate of senators who came to see Senator Ali Wamako to commiserate with him on the death of his elder brother. His elder brother had died just a few days ago. But they've left the city, and the focus is now back on the elections tomorrow. 75,403 votes in contention. Now, the interesting thing about that figure is that over 50,000 of those votes are going to come from just two local government areas, Kebe and Gada local government areas. Over 50,000 votes are going to be coming from there. Another place that people are going to be looking at in Sokoto State is Ilela local government area. But 22 out of 23 local government areas, there will be supplementary elections in those 22 local government areas. So it's quite a big deal. 135 polling units to be covered. The dynamics are going on and on. One of the major issues that I was talking with Senator Wamako earlier, and one of the major issues that they have has to do with voter apathy, and he was calling on people to come out and exercise their right to vote, even though this particular election has been drawn out longer than most. However, they're hoping that people would come out and exercise their right to vote tomorrow in the 22 local government areas where supplementary elections will be holding. It's pretty calm city, has always been on some level. Now, one of the things that the resident electoral commissioner talked to us about earlier today was about the cancellation of votes in particular polling units. And I was asking him, you know, with the deployment of security personnel, with heightened security in the state, how come we still have situations where there's overvoting or snatching of ballot boxes or violence and things like that? And he basically said that's what many politicians do. They know that this is the stronghold of an opposition, so they go there and they scuttle the elections. So it's something that a lot of people have started capitalizing on, and they say they're going to be looking at that going forward. However, they're hoping that the elections tomorrow will be more peaceful, and that things like overvoting and violence, which, you know, marred a lot of the votes, 75,403 of those votes in the last governorship elections, will not repeat itself come the elections tomorrow. But the major issue really has to do with voter apathy here in Sokoto State. How many people will be willing to come out to exercise their right to vote? I spoke to a lot of people today, and many people, although they say, well, yes, we will still come out, especially in Kebe and Gada local government areas, but there are people who feel, you know, this has been drawn out for too long, I'm tired, I don't want to come out anymore. So we have all of that going on. In fact, we met a woman earlier today who sells kunu, so I had to buy some. But I used the opportunity to talk to her about whether she was going to come out to vote tomorrow. She was very emphatic. She said no, you know, she can't do this 4 times. She said, I voted during the presidential, then the governorship, then I have to come back again. She said she doesn't want to put herself through that situation. However, the state is calling on everyone who is a patriotic citizen of Sokoto State to come out and cast their votes in the elections tomorrow. And INEC says they are ready. Voting materials have been spread across the place. Everyone is on guard. Everyone is ready to ensure that they have a free, fair and peaceful process, hopefully tomorrow, Ijama.
Again, but Kayla, just before I let you run off, indeed, you had to buy some kunu. That's fine. That's fine. We're laughing at you here in the studio. It's fine. But just to ask, when we spoke to you during the governorship, you had said that security was pretty tight where you were. Do you still get that same sense where you are now?
Actually, it's a lot more right now, Ijoma. I was looking, especially, okay, so here's the thing. We're actually right now in Sokoto South. So that's where we're in Sokoto South local government area. And the security here is so much. There's so many policemen around. I see patrol cars, rather, all the time, you know, always around us. Even the hotel where we're staying, there's a lot of security personnel. So there's a lot being deployed for this particular supplementary election. Maybe it's to ensure that those incidents of violence that marred the governorship election do not repeat themselves again, hopefully. Or maybe it's to make sure that the peace in Sokoto State is kept, because it's very important that that Sokoto remains peaceful. This is the seat of the caliphate. The fact that there isn't a lot of violence in Sokoto State does not mean that they have one political view. It's a state with many people with very divergent views, but somehow they're able to keep the peace and not, devolve into where it becomes violent. But we're hoping that that doesn't happen tomorrow. But the places to look out for: Kebe, Gada local government area, Ilela, Wamako. These are all the places where elections are going to be holding. 22 out of the entire 23 local government areas in Sokoto State. So that's something we'll be looking out for, Ijoma.
Any restriction of movement, Kayla? I know I said the last time before I let you go. Is there any restriction of movement, or because I can see some cars and people moving behind you? Is there going to be anything like that?
The resident electoral commissioner told me that there wouldn't be any. He said it will be mild, not a lot of crazy movement going around. They'll be watching the movement. That was how he put it. So we'll be watching the movement to make sure that no one uses the opportunity to perpetrate violence and whatnot, but not as tight as it was in the last elections when the governorship elections held a few weeks ago, Ijoma.
All right, thanks a lot, Kayla, over there in Sokoto. I mean, we're going to be at it all day tomorrow, so surely we're going to be checking in with you as well.
Make sure she has enough kunu.
And make sure you have enough kunu, as Nyota said.
Hopefully. Being the other one.
Thanks, Kayla.
Okay. There's the view from Sokoto. And throughout today, for what's left of today and tomorrow, we'll be checking in to see what exactly the preparations are. And then, of course, when it gets underway, we'll try to also follow through and keep you updated on everything that's going on. I know we put you on pause in Abuja, Mr. Yusuf. So we're gonna come back to our Abuja studios now. And in view of what you've heard, I guess there's more to say now, because we've heard the view from Kano, we've heard the view from the Plateau, and now we've heard the view from Sokoto, 3 of the states where there will be supplementary elections tomorrow. And you talked about security. It was while you were just about to talk about security, we put you on pause. Seated beside you there is the security expert in Kabir Ademu. So, Kabir, security seems to be the other part of this equation that may affect whether or not people will come out to vote. Do you think because of the smaller number, will help this in any way tomorrow?
In terms of the number of personnel that will be deployed, yes, it's easier to manage because looking at a national election, quote unquote, where all the 700 plus locations and the polling units that were affected in the presidential and national assembly elections, we're looking at now specific locations in the 18 states where I guess the police is confident that it has enough personnel to man those locations. Now, that is looking at it from, I would say, the street level. If I'm looking at it as an expert, which is what I am, unfortunately, I haven't had the kind of language I am expecting to hear from the leadership of the various security organizations. So Sokoto, I'll use Sokoto, and incidentally that's my state as an example. What are the traditional security challenges in Sokoto? It's one of gang violence, banditry in the border area between Sokoto and Zamfara. Now, the gangs, are they just going to disappear tomorrow because there are police deployed on the streets? No, they're not going to disappear. Unfortunately, the big elephant in the room is the conduct of the politicians. In some states like Kano, a lot has been done to manage that desperation by politicians. I haven't seen a lot of that in Sokoto. The other aspect of that is the deterrence element by the security agencies. How many people have been prosecuted from the presidential and national assembly to the governorship and state assembly elections to serve as deterrence to would-be offenders in the election tomorrow? As far as I know, none. The first elections that took place, the presidential and national assembly elections, almost a month ago. And if till date nobody has been prosecuted, at least publicly, that this would-be offenders would know, then there will be no deterrence to that element. So, like I said, that's looking at it from a higher level. From the street level, yes, you are seeing a lot of massive deployment, and you are hoping that that will prevent offenders. Unfortunately, criminologists and studies have shown that that is not enough to stop offenders. We need to do a bit more than that. The triggers of those offenses need to be understood, and they need to be attacked from their root causes. I like what the example, I like giving that example that Kenya did. When it realized that it had the problem of gang violence during elections, it engaged the leadership of those gangs, brought them on board, and gave them responsibilities on election day. That way, they do not have the time to engage in activities that would subvert the electoral processes. I'm not hearing that kind of strategic thinking by the leadership of the various security departments. So I can sit here and be optimistic that nothing will happen, but the better side of it, I need to see more strategic action by the leadership of those security agencies, which unfortunately I'm not seeing and I'm not hearing.
Okay, Mr. Dan, we're talking about taking action here. Yes, we have information from the police about the number of electoral offenders that have been arrested, and investigations are ongoing, a total of about 1,119. Now, that sounds like a large number, considering the fact that this conversation around electoral offenders has been going on over and over again. In the last election, I think they mentioned, I'm not too sure, a figure of about 18,000 or thereabouts.
Yeah, almost 20, yeah.
Quite a large number of electoral offenders. The conversation now is around, why is it that the electoral offenders arrested never end up being prosecuted? Do you think a prosecution and actual conviction will help to deter these people?
Yeah, that's the whole principle behind the administration of criminal justice. You arrest offenders, you prosecute them, maybe not all, but at least a significant number. Hopefully that will serve as deterrence to would-be offenders. Now, where you have a situation like you rightly pointed out, where all you do is arrest, and in most instances, and that's my view, you arrest the foot soldiers. You don't even arrest those behind that are funding it and that are foiling the offenses. I take us back to the promise by President Buhari during his inauguration in May 29th in 2015. He realized this problem when he mentioned that the gathering of evidence by our security agencies is an issue, and he promised on that day that he was going to actively train our security agencies in gathering evidences and storing these evidences to support the prosecution of offenders. With the benefit of hindsight, we haven't seen enough of that. Not so many of the security agencies even have evidence labs in them. I know of instances where evidences that were retrieved from a bombing site were kept on the table of the officer that was in charge of the case. Everybody who entered the particular office, he would show him, and the person would touch in this case, the steering wheel of a vehicle that was used as a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device in Abuja here. So how do you go to court to now, for instance, if the person who drove that vehicle was arrested, how do you now tie that steering wheel to that instance when several other hands have touched the steering wheel? So that's the major challenge. They do the arrest, then go back to do the investigation. Why don't they gather the evidence either during the process of arrest or immediately after the arrest, so that they present this, charge these offenders to court and prosecute that immediately? We've lost that chance, unfortunately, and I say this with all sense of responsibility. 1 month into the presidential and National Assembly elections, we've not seen prosecution. I'm not expecting anyone to be prosecuted. But
the police
in this period.
Mr.
So hopefully.
If I may come in here, the police says they're still investigating these cases. You think it's too long a time to investigate the cases?
Yes, Nyota, being very frank here, I'm not going to sit here and whitewash the police. If they were doing their work properly, the evidence should have been gathered during their arrest. We speak a lot around intelligence. Our capabilities currently do not allow the gathering of such evidences. So I see that more as a political statement. If at all they were serious about it, by now those people would have been charged And then, of course, if the courts are convinced that they committed the offenses they did, they would have been prosecuted. I can be optimistic, sit here and tell you that I'm optimistic, but I really, really doubt, after having studied this issue in Nigeria for more than 15 years, that we are going to see any prosecution from that. If at all there would be, it's not going to be systematic. It will probably be based on some principles that between the police and the judges that try those cases. My point is one of the weaknesses that is leading to the situation where we are, both in terms of insecurity and then all electoral challenges, is the weakness in our criminal justice system. And it's not specific to the electoral cycle. It's one of the challenges that we have as a country that needs to be addressed.
Mr. Adamu, let me come to you. And before we went on the last break, I was talking about the political parties and what role they should play. Because we've talked a lot about what INEC should do and what they didn't do in terms of voter education, etc. But when you look at the political parties, they've been a bit busy with the fallout of the last governorship election, wondering what to do. For example, Imo, already they're talking about it there. Should they have done something? Should they do something differently against tomorrow? Nobody's hearing anything about them educating their voters to come out. We're not really hearing much. What do you think?
I agree with you. We've put a lot of focus on INEC, even in terms of voter sensitization. The political parties have a role to play in that regard. They are more concerned, frankly, with elements of incentivization or to an extent, even vote buying. From what we're hearing, we've talked about Kano. It's been covered extensively by the media. The particular case of Nasarawa local government, where both parties really have engaged in more vote buying and incentivization of voters through different means. Putting some elements of restraint on their members in terms of the conduct of their members, we need to see more of that by the political parties. Inclusivity in terms of opening up the space to allow Nigerians generally to get involved within the electoral process, because one of the triggers of the insecurity challenges that we have in the country, and of course even the electoral security issues that we have, is that closed political space where you either have to be rich, quote unquote, or a member of a certain political class before you can join the political process. So the political parties have a lot to do in terms of the development of our political process. I'm looking at it now from a security risk management process. I'm not a politician, so my comments are based on analysis of the process and how the weaknesses of the political parties have unfortunately contributed to the challenges that we're having in our electoral process. And in summary, they need to do more to support INEC's role in ensuring that we have a free and fair electoral process. I always say that politicians are the #1 beneficiaries of our democratic system, and unfortunately, they are also the #1 risk to the democratic process. Their desperation, their inability to approach politics in a manner that allows the decorum that we expect of them is a threat to our democracy, and they are the best persons to manage that threat, the political parties, I mean.
Now, Mr. Yusuf, what's your view on the same subject? I mean, this one is tomorrow, so there may be very little we can do anybody can do, the political parties inclusive, ahead of tomorrow. But in terms of the link between their members' behavior and what eventually becomes of the process, and even some of the security risks that are presented by the process, are the parties doing enough currently?
Yeah, it depends on what we understand as enough, or what we see as enough, because they have actually been doing enough with regards to buying votes. They've been doing enough in terms of deploying political talks to foment violence. And I think it's important for us to look at the current reality vis-a-vis the role being played by political parties in our political development. Ideally, we would say that political party has the most important role to play in a democracy. And one of those, as rightly mentioned by Alhaji Kabir, is to ensure that political education is acquired by all and sundry in the country. We understand what civic is. We understand, their members basically understand what the role is, and they drive the process for conversations around development agenda. It shouldn't just be about one party ruling, because the other opposition party are expected to continuously provide an alternative voice when it comes to policy issues. And in election, we actually expect them to conscientize people, to really let people know, like some of the problems we are facing. We've actually passed a lot of burden on INEC in the area of voter education, which ordinarily is the role that political parties should play an active role on. Political parties have structures in different local governments. They have structures in different ward, different polling units, and it means they are spread across nook and crannies of the country. And they should actually leverage on the existing structure to pass on such campaigns and enlightenment to people in different locations. But unfortunately, in our climate, political parties are not playing this role. What is on the agenda is for them to deploy crook means to win elections. And this explains the entire orientations around the management of political parties in the country. In this present country, political parties are actually managed by few set of people, though we have people who have emerged as members of the board of the National Working Committee and so on and so forth. But the people who actually provide necessary support for them to be there and provide necessary financial support to finance the activities of the political parties are people who manage. And this brought down to the question of lack of inclusivity in the entire party process that has been on a political agenda since 1999. So fundamentally, political parties are not playing their role. They are less concerned about playing their role. What they are majorly concerned about is to win election through crook or hook means. And this is quite obvious in the way and manner at which the response to issues around the elections. In different elections, look at
elections.
Look at Kogi elections.
Mr. Shamsuddin Yusuf, I have to interrupt you here and put you on pause. We need to take a quick break. When we'll come back to you, tidy up your thoughts. Please don't lose your train of thoughts. I'll be back shortly.